The mountain wind cut through the valley like a sharp knife. It carried dust and a feeling that something very bad was about to happen. 3 miles away, there was a concrete building standing against a dark sky with no stars. The land between them was 15,840 feet of rough, rocky ground with hot air pockets and spinning winds. Inside that building, a bomb trigger glowed red. It was waiting to send a signal to 6 bomb groups hidden across 3 different continents. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Hayes pressed his eye against a viewing scope. He watched his best shooter miss for the 3rd time in a row. The glowing bullet disappeared into the darkness. The wind pushed it away at 2,400 meters. No hit, the spotter's voice crackled through the radio. Wind is pushing bullets 43 minutes past straight up and down. Sergeant Marcus Webb was the 2nd best sniper in SEAL Team 7. He lowered his Barrett M107 rifle and looked at Hayes. He did not say anything. His face showed the look of a man who had pushed science as far as it could go and still lost. "Sir, we're out of time," Webb said quietly. "That device turns on in 40 minutes. If it sends its signal, I know what happens." Hayes cut him off. The information they had was clear. 6 bombs would go off at the same time. The targets were places with regular people. Thousands would die. They had tracked the leader of this bomb network to this valley. They had trapped him in a strong building built into the side of the mountain. But the bad guy had expected an attack from the air. He had put his signal-sending equipment on the top floor of the building. It was protected by thick concrete walls and the natural shape of the mountain. This defeated every drone and every missile that America had. The only choice was a perfect shot to destroy the equipment before it could send the signal. But 3 miles through mountain winds at night, with hot and cold air making invisible walls of crazy, spinning air, it was not really a shot. It was more like a prayer. Hayes lifted his radio. "Command, this is Sierra 7. Requesting permission for a ghost protocol." There was static. Then a voice came through. It sounded heavy with importance and years of experience. "You are certain we need her?" Hayes looked at the building. He looked at his shooters. He looked at the clock counting down. "She is the only option we have left, sir." Permission granted. "But Hayes, she has not picked up a rifle in 3 years. And after what happened?" "I know, sir. I was there." More static. "Call sign Meridian. Pickup location sent. You have 35 minutes. The team members looked at each other. The new guys who joined after Syria looked confused. But the soldiers who had been around longer became very still. Webb's jaw got tight. Ghost Meridian, a young specialist, whispered, "That is just a made-up story. A training tale to make new soldiers feel better about missing shots." "No," Webb said softly, checking his watch. "She is real. And if command is calling her, we are either about to see something impossible or we are about to watch this mission fail with our own eyes." Hayes grabbed his bag. "She will be here in 20 minutes. Webb, get the M200 ready. Original setup, no changes. And get everyone away from the shooting spot. She works alone." "Sir, the M200? That is not even our main rifle anymore." "Why would she want?" "Because it is what she used in Kandahar. She made a 3.2-mile shot through a sandstorm. Every weather expert said accurate shooting will be mathematically impossible." Hayes' voice got lower. "Just get the rifle ready." The wind howled. Somewhere in the darkness, a helicopter's blades beat against the night. The Black Hawk helicopter touched down for exactly 8 seconds. One person dropped from the side door. She moved in a smooth way that showed she had done thousands of missions. Her body remembered every movement. The helicopter lifted off before it even fully landed. It disappeared into the darkness as fast as it came. She walked toward the team spot. She carried nothing but an old canvas bag and a kind of calmness that made the weather seem loud. Quinn. Her name appeared in no public record, no medal list, no official team roster. But in the places where snipers gathered, like shooting ranges, weapon rooms, and quiet corners where people who lived looking through rifle scopes told stories, her call sign was whispered like something holy. Ghost Meridian. She was 34 years old, but her eyes looked like they had seen many more years. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly. You could see a scar that ran from her right temple to her jaw. It was a thick line of healed skin that told a story of flying metal pieces and surviving. She wore simple field clothes. No rank symbols. No name tags. Nothing that showed she was anything other than a woman who had walked out of the night. Hayes met her 50 meters from their spot. Quinn, Commander, her voice was low and rough, like wind blowing over rocks. You said impossible shot. 3.1 miles. Target is a signal-sending device. Hard case. Heat protection. Top floor. East window. Partly hidden by an air vent. Winds blowing 30 to 45 knots with spinning air from the valley rising up. We have, he checked his watch, 28 minutes before it goes live. She did not answer. She just turned and looked at the building. It was visible now as a darker shape against the dark mountains. Her eyes moved across the land with careful precision. She was reading a language written in height and air pressure. Your shooters tried to bear it? She asked. Webb put 15 bullets downrange. Best grouping was 4 feet apart at that distance. All because of wind pushing them. We fixed the settings twice. Tried different bullet types. Even tried shooting from the south side to use the mountain as a wind blocker. Nothing worked. It would not. She started walking toward the shooting spot. 3 miles is not a distance. It is a deal you make with science. And the Barrett is too loud. Webb stood up as she came close. He offered his hand. Ma'am, I have heard a lot about. She walked right past him to the equipment cases. You got the M200 ready? Yes, ma'am. Original setup, like Commander Hayes asked. But ma'am, with respect, the M200's working range is... I know its range, Sergeant. She knelt beside the case. Her fingers moved across the latches with practiced speed. I also know that working range is a measurement for average shooters in average conditions. This is not average. The rifle came out of its case like an old friend being welcomed home. The Intervention M200 Chaytak, a weapon made for super long-range accuracy. It shot .40 8 bullets. It could keep bullets flying faster than sound past 2,000 yards. In the right hands, with the right conditions, with the kind of understanding that was almost like being one with wind and gravity, it could reach farther than any computer said it could. She put together in the darkness. No light, no pausing to think. Each part found its place by touch alone. The team watched in silence as she made changes that seemed random. She moved the two-legged stand forward 3 inches. She added weight to the back of the gun. She even scraped off part of the barrel cover that Webb had painted for hiding. Ma'am, Webb said carefully, why are you taking off the wind sensor holder? She paused. Her hand stayed on the rifle. Because wind sensors measure what the air is doing where you are standing. I need to know what it is doing everywhere between here and there. She looked up at him. You cannot trust machines for a shot like this, Sergeant. They will lie to you the moment things change. The only thing that will not lie is the wind itself. If you learn to listen. Hayes moved closer. Quinn, I need to know if this is possible. Not in theory. Actually possible. She stood up. The rifle rested in her arms. She looked at the target building. When she spoke, her voice had no confidence or doubt. It was just a flat statement, like someone saying the sky is blue. 3.1 miles through mountain wind is beyond what humans can do. The bullet drop alone is over 300 feet. The wind will push the bullet more than 20 feet to the side at this distance. The spinning of the earth will push the bullet 4 inches to the right. And that is before figuring in temperature changes, moisture in the air, and the fact that we're shooting across a valley that is basically a wind tunnel with unpredictable swirling air every 50 meters. She turned to face him. It is not possible. Not by math. Not by science. Not by any training book ever written. The team looked defeated. Then she smiled. It was a thin, cold smile with no humor in it. Good thing I stopped trusting training books in Kandahar. She walked past them toward the ridge. She moved to a spot 30 meters from where Webb had been shooting. Clear this area. I need complete silence. No radios. No moving. No breathing loud enough for me to hear. Give me 15 minutes of stillness. I will give you 1 shot. That is all I will need. 1 shot. A young specialist could not help himself. Ma'am, even if you hit the window, the device is... I am not aiming for the window, she said quietly. I am aiming for a bounce point on the air vent. The bullet will hit the vent and bounce down at an 18-degree angle. It will go through the window and into the device's power connection. The power connection is the only weak spot showing. Hit that, and the device is dead. Complete silence from the team. That is, Webb started. Impossible, she finished. I know. Now give me silence. Elara Quinn knelt on cold stone. She began the steps that separated amazing shots from lucky ones. First, reading the ground. She pressed her hand flat against the rock. She felt the temperature difference between the stone and the air. Cold stone meant heavy air settling in the valley. Heavier air meant more resistance. More push on the bullet. More drop. She moved her hand bit by bit, mapping temperature differences like someone measuring land heights. Second, studying the wind, but not with machines. She closed her eyes and turned her face into the breeze. She let it wash over her skin. The wind talked in layers. There was a gust at her spot. There were the mid-height air currents 200 meters up. There was the high-up jet stream that would catch the bullet at its highest point and try to steal it away. Most snipers would check computer, plug in numbers, trust what it said. Elara had learned a different way. She learned on that night in Kandahar when every sensor stopped working, when the sandstorm turned their electronics into expensive junk, when she made the shot anyway. Because she had learned to read what machines could not measure. She opened her eyes and began the longest part, watching. For 10 minutes, she did not touch the rifle. She just watched. She watched the little dust tornadoes forming in the valley. She watched the way moonlight caught on tiny pieces floating in the air. She watched the trees on the far ridge bending in patterns that showed invisible rivers of air flowing through the sky. Behind her, staying carefully quiet, Webb watched through the spotting scope. He had seen amazing snipers work before. Men and women who could thread a bullet through impossible conditions with perfect precision. But this was different. Quinn was not treating the shot like a math problem to solve. She was treating it like a conversation she was getting ready to have. Wind is spinning, she murmured. She was talking more to herself than anyone else. Clockwise, heat rise from a valley floor. Hits the ridge at the 2-mile mark. Creates a standing spinning tunnel. If the bullet catches that spinning tunnel, it gets pushed high and right. I have to aim low and left when I shoot. That way I use the spin instead of fighting it. Webb blinked. Every word she just said went against normal shooting rules. You do not aim away from wind push. You aim into it. You do not use wind spinning. You avoid it. And you definitely do not treat a spinning wind tunnel as something helpful instead of a problem. Hayes moved beside him. His voice was barely a whisper. Is she actually planning a bounce shot at 3 miles? I think so, sir. But the math does not matter if she makes it work. Quinn settled behind the rifle. She finally pressed her cheek to the stock like greeting an old friend. She made tiny changes to the scope. Her breathing slowed to something you could barely see. Through the spotting scope, Webb watched her thumb move on the side dial. 3 clicks left. Everything in his training screamed it should go right. She whispered into the wind. 2,800 feet per second when it leaves. Flying time 6.8 seconds. Bullet rises 4 feet at its highest point. Drops 326 feet total. Wind catches it at 1,200 meters. Pushes right. Spinning brings it back. Bounce angle needs to be perfect. Hit the vent cover 3 inches from the welded seam. Bounce down and through. Webb felt his heart beating faster. She was describing the bullet's whole journey before it even left the gun. She was describing a future that had not happened yet, and she said it like she was reading from a history book. Moisture in the air is rising, she continued. Heavier air at the 2-mile mark. I will adjust with slightly lower aim to make up for less drop in thick air. Her hand moved on the up and down dial. 1 click down. Every sniper on the team wanted to yell. You do not lower your aim on a super long shot. You raise it more to make up for the bullet falling. But she just did the opposite. Then she did something that made Webb's blood run cold. She reached up and changed the scope's focus setting. This setting made sure the crosshairs and target were on the same visual level. She turned it to a setting that would make the target blurry at this distance. It would make exact aiming impossible. Ma'am, he whispered. Quiet, not angry. Just absolute. I am not aiming at what I can see. I am aiming at where the wind is taking me. She settled deeper into position. Her breathing became something less than breathing. A gentle exchange of air that did not disturb the stillness she had created around herself. Through the scope, her trigger finger rested alongside the guard. Not touching, just waiting. The mountains held their breath. Quinn's eyes were open but not really seeing. They were turned inward to some math that existed beyond thinking. This was a place her teachers had called the Zen state, where studying gave way to feeling, where thousands of hours of practice squeezed into a single moment of pure understanding. Her lips barely moved. Wind set. The world went silent. Every person on that ridge felt it. The moment before the moment. The instant where getting ready met doing. Where all the training and figuring and skill collapsed into one action that could not be taken back. Time froze. And Elara Quinn, Ghost Meridian, the woman who had been erased from official records but carved into legend, whispered the second half of the phrase that would change everything. Fire. The moment before she squeezed the trigger, a memory tried to push into her mind. She pushed it down. She locked it away in the same place where she kept all the other ghosts. But between heartbeats, in that tiny instant where her thoughts flickered, the past clawed its way forward anyway. Kandahar province. 3 years ago, the mission instructions had been clean and simple. Kill a high-value target who was helping supply lines for enemy networks. The information was solid. 3 different sources confirmed it. Heat-sensing cameras showed one body heat signature in the target building. Second floor, eastern room. Everything lined up perfectly. Too perfectly. She had taken a shot from 3,200 meters. Her longest confirmed kill at that time. The sandstorm had been like something from the Bible. You could see almost nothing. But she had found the rhythm in the chaos. She had found the short moments when wind speed dropped enough for a bullet to slip through. She had adjusted for conditions that weather satellites had made long-range shooting impossible. The bullet had flown true. She had watched through her scope as the target fell down. Exactly as planned. Mission success. Helicopter pickup in 10 minutes. Her spotter, a sergeant named Daniels, had already packed the equipment when the second explosion came. Not from the building, from the street below. The heat-sensing cameras had shown one signature. But heat-sensing cameras did not account for body heat blocked by the target's own body. It did not show the 8-year-old boy who had been sitting behind the man, hidden from the heat sensors. Reading a book by candlelight, the bullet that killed the target had passed through him. It broke into pieces as it came out the other side. The boy had died right away. The international problem that followed had been terrible. The boy's father was a local leader who had been working with American forces. The man they killed was his brother. The target had been using the child as protection. He knew that Western forces would not shoot if they knew a child was there, but they had not known. And Quinn, the Ghost Meridian, the sniper they said could see through walls and shoot through storms, had killed a child. The military investigation cleared her. She had followed all the rules. The information had been checked. Every step had been done right, but the news did not care about steps and rules. The father's sadness, shown on every TV channel, had been too powerful. The picture of the boy's body was too damning. Her commanders had given her a choice: accept being let go with a sealed record, or face a military trial that would probably clear her, but destroy the team's good name in the process. They had needed someone to blame, someone to satisfy the international anger while protecting their ability to do missions. She had signed the papers the next day. The scar on her temple came later. 6 weeks after being let go, she had been visiting Daniels at a military base when explosive shells started hitting the compound. Daniels had been standing in the open. She had tackled him behind a barrier. She had shielded him with her body as flying metal carved a valley across her skull. Daniels survived. He wrote her letter after letter. He kept saying sorry. He said she had been betrayed by her own command. She never wrote back. What was there to say? She had made the shot. The boy had died. Everything else was just noise. The military had erased her after that. They scrubbed her name from records. They blacked out her service history. They removed her from computer systems. It was easier to make her a ghost than to explain her. Easier to let her become a legend than admit they had thrown away their best sniper to make politicians happy. Webb found her a year later. She was working private security in Morocco. He had tracked her through old contacts. He showed up at her apartment with a bottle of bourbon and a question: Why did you let them do it? She had looked at him like he was speaking a different language. They did not do anything to me, Sergeant. I did it to myself. I pulled the trigger. I own the outcome. The information was bad. The heat cameras. I could have taken more time. Could have asked for someone to actually see the target. Could have waited for better conditions. She had poured them both drinks. Could have means I did not. And a kid is dead because of it. Webb had tried to argue, but she had shut him down. You want to help me, Sergeant? Remember this moment. Remember that every shot we take has results we cannot always see. Teach that to the next group of snipers. Make them better than I was. He had left unsatisfied, but he understood there was no forgiveness she would accept until tonight. When Hayes had called with the mission information, she had known right away what it was. An impossible shot to stop a lot of people from dying. The kind of shot that would kill thousands if it missed, save thousands if it hit. The kind of shot that could not be made. The kind of shot that only someone with nothing to lose would try. She had said yes before he finished explaining, not for forgiveness. She did not believe in forgiveness. But because maybe, just maybe if she made this shot, if she used the skills that had once killed a child to save thousands more, it would not balance the scales. But it would at least add some weight to the other side. The memory squeezed back into its storage place as her finger found the trigger. For the ones I cannot save, she whispered into the wind. Then she took the shot. The M200 kicked back against her shoulder with familiar force. A controlled explosion sent 305 grains of copper-covered bullet screaming down the range at 2,800 feet per second. For the first quarter second, everything went according to science. The bullet climbed as the barrel's angle lifted it toward the target. It obeyed Newton and gravity in every shooting chart ever written. Then it entered the wind. The first push came at 300 meters. A side breeze from the north pushed the round 4 inches to the right. But Elara had already made up for this. She had aimed 4 inches left when she shot. The bullet moved back to center line. At 600 meters, it hit the temperature layer she had predicted. Cold air pooling in the valley dip. Thicker air meant more resistance. More resistance meant more drop. Her single click of lowered aim earlier had accounted for this. The bullet, which should have been climbing too high, instead kept perfect path, 900 meters. The bullet was still faster than sound, but slowing down. It was fighting air resistance that grew bigger and bigger as it pushed through air molecules. This was where most super long shots began falling apart. But the .408 round was designed for exactly this. It stayed stable past the point where science said it should start tumbling. 1,200 meters. The standing spinning wind tunnel. The rotating cylinder wind created by hot air rising and hitting the mountain ridge. This was the moment that had beaten Webb's shots. The unpredictable storm that sent bullets flying off course like leaves in a hurricane. But Elara had not fought the spinning tunnel. She had used it. The bullet entered the rotation on the left side. This was where the circular wind was moving right, exactly as she had calculated. Instead of being thrown off target, the bullet was caught in the rotation. It was pushed right and up. It spun through the tunnel like a planet caught in a gravity well. For one moment, the bullet actually moved faster as the wind sped it up. Then it came out of the spinning tunnel on the opposite side. The wind that had pushed it right now pulled it back left. The bullet came out of the chaos on exactly the path Elara had mapped in her mind. A course no computer would ever predict, because it required using the wind as both obstacle and helper. 1,800 meters. 2/3 of the journey done. The bullet had lost 1/3 of its speed, but stayed stable. The Coriolis effect, the spinning of the Earth itself, was now changing the path. It pushed right with invisible force. But Elara had aimed into the Coriolis drift hours ago, before she had even touched the rifle. She understood that at 3 miles, the Earth's rotation became as important as the wind. 2,400 meters. The bullet reached its highest point, the peak of the curve. It hung for one crystal clear instant at maximum height before gravity completely took it back. Through the spotting scope, invisible to anyone watching, the round was now falling faster than it was moving forward. A falling path that would see it drop 300 feet straight down before reaching target distance. 3,000 meters. The bullet re-entered thicker air at lower height. It met the second temperature layer. Warm air rising from a valley floor. The added thickness created resistance but also gave more stable flight conditions. The round kept its spin. Its copper jacket was still whole, still able to make the precise strike demanded of it. 3,200 meters, 2 seconds from hitting. The bullet had covered 3 miles of impossible ground. It had navigated heat layers and spinning tunnels and the rotation of the Earth itself. It was traveling at barely 1,300 feet per second now. Slower than sound, but stable, still deadly, still precise. The air vent housing came into view. Well, not really, since the bullet had no view, but its path crossed with the metal structure exactly where Elara had aimed. Not the window, not the wall, but the angled housing 3 feet from the window's edge. Impact. The bullet struck the air vent slope surface at precisely 18 degrees from straight on. The laws of bouncing took over. Angle going in equals angle going out. The round, instead of breaking apart or tumbling, bounced off the metal housing. Its path changed by exactly the amount Elara had calculated. The bounced bullet entered the window below the housing. It traveled downward at 18 degrees. Its speed was reduced, but its path was true. Inside the room, in the darkness that heat cameras had mapped hours earlier, the signal-sending device sat on a metal table. Its exposed power connection faced the window. The bullet struck the connection dead center. The device died instantly. No explosion. No dramatic fireworks. Just a silent death of electronics hit by high-speed copper. Circuit boards shattered. Power storage units burst. The delicate structure of long-range communication became fragments. 6.8 seconds after Elara took the shot, the mission was complete. In 3 cities across 2 continents, teams waiting for signal codes that would never arrive sat confused as their devices stayed silent. In Brussels, a bomb expert checking his watch would later describe feeling a sudden certainty that something had changed, though he would not know what. In Jakarta, a cell leader would stare at his equipment and wonder why the orders had not come. Thousands of people went about their lives. They never knew how close they had come to dying. They never knew that a single bullet fired across an impossible distance had just rewritten their futures. On the ridge, Webb stared through the spotting scope. His hands were shaking. Impact confirmed, he whispered. Target destroyed. I saw it. The bounce actually worked. She made a bullet bounce at 3 miles and hit a target inside a building. Hayes grabbed his radio. Command, Sierra 7. Target destroyed. Mission success. The team broke into quiet celebration. Fists raised. Silent cheers. The kind of triumph that came from watching the impossible become real. Elara Quinn simply stood. She pushed out the empty shell casing from the M200's chamber. The brass clinked on stone, still hot from the explosion that had sent it downrange. She caught it before it rolled away. She held it in her palm like a good luck charm. One shot. One impossible, science-defying, career-defining shot that had just saved thousands of lives. She looked at Hayes. How long do we have before pickup? He checked his watch. He was still processing what he had just seen. 15 minutes, Quinn. That shot did what it needed to do. She began taking apart the rifle with the same careful precision she had used to put together. That is all that matters. But her hands were not quite steady, and the tears she would not let fall gathered at the corners of her eyes. Not falling, but there. For the first time in 3 years, the weight had shifted, not balanced, not forgiven, but shifted. The celebration lasted exactly 40 seconds. Then the building lit up with gun flashes. Contact! Webb dropped behind cover as bullets snapped past a position. Glowing tracer rounds drew red lines through the darkness. Multiple enemies. Second floor. Returning fire. The team scattered into defensive positions. Muscle memory taking over. But they were spread out. They had been in watching mode. They were not ready for a gunfight. Whoever was in that building had just realized their signal device was dead. They decided that killing the Americans who destroyed it was the next best thing. Hayes pressed his radio button. Command, Sierra 7 taking fire. Request immediate. A rocket-propelled grenade screamed across the valley. It hit the ridge 30 meters below their position. Rock and flying metal exploded upward. It showered the team with debris. They have got heavy weapons. The young specialist, his name was Garrett, pressed himself flat against stone. Sir, we need to fall back. Hayes was already thinking it through. They had 15 meters to the pickup point, but it was across open ground with no cover. The building had a clear view of their whole escape route. Anyone who tried to move would be shot down before they made 5 steps. Another RPG round screamed past, closer this time. These were not warning shots or panic fire. Someone over there knew exactly what they were doing. Webb, can you shoot back? Hayes shouted over the gunfire. The sergeant was already behind his Barrett. His scope pressed his eye. No, sir. Too many targets. They are too well hidden. I can take out 1, maybe 2, but there are at least 8 up there. We shoot at 1 window. They fire from 3 others. A burst of machine gun fire raked across their position. Garrett screamed. Not hit, just terror breaking through training. He was trapped behind a boulder that was slowly being chewed apart by incoming bullets. We are stuck, Webb said flatly. They have the high ground, better weapons, and we are out in the open. Unless we get air support in the next 60 seconds, we are not making pickup. Hayes started calling for attack helicopters, but he knew they would not arrive in time. Attack helicopters were 20 minutes out, maybe 30. They would be dead in 5. That is when Elara moved. She had already put the M200 back together. She was settling back into firing position when Hayes noticed. Quinn, get to cover. You cannot. Count targets, she interrupted. Her eye found the scope. Tell me locations. Webb understood first. Ma'am, we are taking fire from 8 positions. You cannot possibly. Location, Sergeant. Now. Her voice carried the kind of authority that bypassed rank and logic. The authority of someone who had already decided what happened next. She was just waiting for the world to catch up. Webb grabbed the spotting scope. 2nd floor, western window. 2 targets. 3rd window from left. Solo shooter with PCAM machine gun. Top floor, eastern window, RPG team. 4th floor. Enough. Era's breathing slowed. I will take them left to right. Call hits. Ma'am, they are 3 miles away and shooting at us. You cannot make precision shots while the M200 barked. 6.8 seconds later. Hit. Western window. First target down. She worked the bolt. Fired again. Hit. 2nd target. Western window. The rifle's rhythm was steady, unhurried. Each shot placed with the same impossible precision she had used on the signal device. But now she was doing under fire, with adrenaline flooding her system and demanding she find cover, with bullets cracking past her position, close enough to hear them breaking the sound barrier. PKM, gunner down. Webb's voice climbed with disbelief. How is she? RPG team. East window. Elara murmured, adjusting 3 clicks. Lead shooter. Fire. A pause. Confirmed. Lead shooter hit. RPG falling. Explosion in the building. Secondary fires lit. They're losing visibility. The incoming fire slowed as the targets realized they were being killed one by someone they could not even see. Panic entered their shooting patterns. Wild bursts into darkness. Desperate attempts to find their attacker. But Elara was invisible to them. She was 3 miles away, shooting through conditions they did not know how to read, making shots they did not believe were possible. She was the Ghost Meridian, and she was teaching them why legends exist. 4th floor sniper, she called. Northeast corner. I do not see. Webb started. He is behind the wall, only showing his scope. I can see the lens reflection. Ma'am, you cannot hit a scope reflection at 3. She fired. The silence stretched. Then Webb's voice, quiet with something close to religious wonder. Scope shattered. Sniper down. She just shot through a 4-inch window at 3 miles and hit a scope lens. The remaining targets broke and ran. Webb watched through the spotting scope as they left their positions. They fled into the buildings inside. The shooting stopped completely. Total time that passed, for minutes. Total shots fired, 9. Total targets taken out, 8. 1 shot had missed on purpose. Elara would later explain she fired it into the ceiling to chase the last group of fighters away from the escape route. Hayes stared at her. You just wiped out an entire defensive position while being shot at from extreme range. She stood. She took out the magazine. Sergeant Garrett is trapped behind that boulder. He is about to be circled by 2 fighters moving through the gully at 8 o'clock. Do you want to keep staring at me, Commander? Or should I do something about that too? Hayes spun. Through his night vision, he could just barely see the movement Elara had somehow spotted without magnification. 2 enemies, crawling low through a dry stream bed, trying to circle the team's position. But Elara had already shifted position. The M200 boomed twice. Both targets dropped. Webb presses radio. Garrett, you are clear. Move to pick up now. The young specialist ran. He expected bullets that never came, because every position that could have fired at him was silent. Their shooters dead or fled, defeated by a woman with rifle and the kind of understanding that existed beyond training. The team gathered at the pickup point. In the distance, helicopter blades announced their ride home. Hayes looked at Elara, really looked at her, seeing past the legend to the exhausted woman beneath. You saved us. I made shots. She corrected. You all survived. Those are different things. Quinn, do not. She held up a hand. Do not make this more than it is. I have a particular set of skills. Tonight they were useful. That is the entire story. But they both knew it was not. Because Quinn had just done something no rulebook covered. No training expected. She had made long-range precision shooting into something that looked less like military science and more like art. The Blackhawk settled onto the ridge. Its blades beat against the thin mountain air. The team loaded quickly, professional even in exhaustion. As they lifted off, Webb moved beside her in the helicopter's cargo area. He had to shout over the rotor noise. The shot that bounced. That is going to be studied for decades. You know that, right? She looked out the window at the shrinking mountains. Good. Maybe the next generation will make shots I cannot imagine. Maybe they will save lives I would not have reached. Is that why you came back? To teach us? No. She was quiet for a long moment. I came back because 3 years ago I killed someone I should not have. Tonight, I save people who deserve to live. It does not balance, but it is something. Webb wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her about justice and circumstances and all the reasons she had been wronged. But he understood now that she did not want forgiveness from others. She wanted purpose. And tonight, for the first time in 3 years, she had found it. The helicopter turned toward the rising sun. The question and answer session lasted 6 hours. They had taken Elara to a secret building. The location was classified. Like everything about this mission would stay. Officers from field level to generals waited with questions and recording equipment. She answered every question the same way. Precisely. Technically, with no emotion or extra details. Yes, the wind conditions were within acceptable range. No, the bounce shot was not luck. It was calculated science. Yes, she could do the same thing again if conditions were similar. No, she did not think it was amazing. The officers looked at each other throughout. They clearly did not know what to do with a woman who had just rewritten shooting rules and treated it like filling out forms. Finally, a 2-star general spoke. His nameplate read Harrison. He sent everyone out except Hayes. When the room was empty, he leaned forward. Miss Quinn, we wronged you. She blinked. That had not been in any conversation she expected. Kandahar, Harrison continued. We threw you to the wolves because it was easier for politics. Later, our information people confirmed that the target was using the child as a shield. The heat camera operator had missed a setting step that cost us picture quality. It was our failure, not yours. And we let you take the fall because it was easier than admitting our systems had failed. Elara sat very still. Why are you telling me this now? Because 3 hours ago, the Secretary of Defense watched video of tonight's mission. The bounce shot, the precision fire while being shot at, all of it. Then he pulled your file, what is left of it, and asked me a very simple question. Harrison's face was like stone. He asked why the best sniper in American military history was working private security in Morocco instead of training the next generation. I was let go improperly. Under circumstances we now admit were created to protect the organization's reputation over individual justice. He slid a folder across the table. This is an offer to restore your rank. Full colonel. Backdated to when you should have been promoted 3 years ago. Back pay. acknowledgement that the Kandahar investigation was flawed, and a position as Director of Advanced Marksmanship Development at Quantico. She stared at the folder like it might contain bombs. Hayes spoke quietly from the corner. They want to make it right, Quinn. Make it right? She looked up. For the first time since Webb had known her, anger flashed across her face. You think a promotion makes a dead child, right? You think back pay balances that scale. No, Harrison said flatly. Nothing makes that right. But what happened to you after being let go? The erasing? The abandonment by the organization you had served well? That was added unfairness. We cannot fix Kandahar, but we can stop spreading the lie that you were at fault. The boy's family was told 2 years ago about the bad information and equipment problem. They accepted payment from the government. It does not heal their wound, but they know the truth now, that the woman who fired the shot was working on bad information and bad equipment, and that she was blamed to hide the organization's failures. Harrison's voice softened a little. They know you were a scapegoat, Miss Quinn, and for what it is worth, the father, the elder who lost his son and nephew that night, he asked us to tell you something if we ever found you. Arrow went very still. What? He said, tell the woman shooter that I forgive her. Tell her that forgiveness is not hers to keep from herself. Tell her that my son will want her to keep protecting other children. The words hit like bullets. Ara's hands grabbed the table edge. Her knuckles turned white. You do not have to accept the commission, Harrison continued. But that is why we are offering it. Because the world needs people who can make impossible shots. And more importantly, it needs people who can teach others how to think about those shots. Not just mechanically, but morally. We need teachers who understand that every trigger pull carries weight. Hayes moved forward. The team wants you back, Quinn. Webb has already asked to have you assigned as our permanent sniper advisor. And between you and me, half the special operations community is going to be calling by morning asking for your training time. I am not a hero, she said quietly. No, Harrison agreed. You are better. You are someone who understands the cost of excellence and teaches it anyway. That is worth more than being a hero. She opened the folder. The official papers were clean and formal, heavy with the weight of the organization. Colonel Elara Quinn, Director of Advanced Marksmanship Development. A phone number was attached to the first page with a handwritten note. Sergeant Daniels, he has been waiting 3 years for you to call. Her hand shook slightly as she picked up the pen. If I sign this, she said slowly, I need one condition. Name it. Every student who goes through my program, SEAL, Ranger, Marine Scout Sniper, anyone, they learn about Kandahar, not the legend version. The truth, that I made a shot based on bad information. And a child died. That excellence without wisdom is just a loaded weapon. That we owe it to the people we shoot at to be better than our technology, better than our training, better than our worst day. Harrison nodded. I will have it written into the teaching requirements. She signed. 3 years of being cast out ended with a pen stroke. 6 months later, Quantico, the Advanced Marksmanship Development Facility, was new construction. It was a sprawling complex of shooting ranges, classrooms, and practice centers. It was designed to push American military shooting to new levels. At its center, in an office that looked out over a 1,000-meter range, Colonel Elara Quinn reviewed student reports. Her students were the best each military branch could offer. SEAL snipers who had made confirmed kills at record distances. Army Rangers who had served multiple combat tours. Marine Scout snipers whose names appeared in secret mission reports with words like exceptional and unprecedented. She was making them better, not by teaching them to shoot farther, though they were doing that too, but by teaching them to think differently, to understand that every shot existed in context, that the things that changed a shot were as much about the mind as they were about physics, that the difference between legendary marksmanship and luck was the ability to read conditions no machine could measure. Webb knocked on her open door. He had transferred to Quantico 2 months ago as her deputy. Officially, he was there to handle paperwork and scheduling. Actually, he was there because he told Hayes he would rather work for Quinn than any other commander in the military. Ma'am, we have got the after-action review from the Yemen operation. She took the folder. 3 of her former students had been part of a special team that successfully stopped a hostage situation. The mission-critical shot, 1,847 meters in high wind with the hostage's head partly visible behind the captor, had been made on the first try. The sniper who made it had spent 6 weeks training under Elara's program. 0 civilian casualties. All hostages rescued. Send congratulations to the team, she said, and pull the shooter's training records. I want to see which parts he had trouble with. His success is our teaching success. But his difficulties show where we need to improve what we teach. Already done. Webb smiled. You are creating a generation of snipers who think like you. You know that? I am creating a generation who think better than me, she corrected, who will not need to learn lessons the way I did. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Quinn. Colonel. The voice was familiar, gravelly, carrying authority measured in decades of service. This is General Morrison, JSOC. We have a situation that requires your particular skills. She felt the old readiness kick in. Nature of the situation, sir? Classified until you are briefed. But I can tell you this. We have a target at extreme range, conditions that our computer systems call impossible, and a timeline measured in hours. Our shooters are the best in the world. They say it cannot be done. And you wanted to tell you if they are right? No, Colonel. I want you to make the shot yourself. She looked out the window at her students running drills on the range below. Young men and women learning to push past boundaries that used to define what was possible. Learning that excellence was not a destination, but a discipline. I am an instructor now, General. I have got responsibilities here. I know. And normally I would not pull you from teaching. But Colonel, this shot is 4 miles. For miles. 7,040 yards, a distance that was more than every confirmed kill in history by over 30%, a shot that would require wind reading beyond current teaching, bullet math that pushed ammunition performance past tested limits, an understanding of air science that bordered on art, an impossible shot, exactly the kind of shot that defined who Quinn was and why she had come back. Timeline, she asked. Wheels up in 2 hours. Target information will be explained on the way. We need someone who can figure out if it is possible. And if possible, do it. You are the only name on the list. She thought about Webb, about her students, about the teaching program she had built, about the promise she had made to train the next generation instead of living in the field. Then she thought about what that father in Kandahar had told her through General Harrison. My son would want her to keep protecting other children. I will need one of my students as spotter, she said. Your choice which one. But they need experience reading wind at long distance. This is a teaching opportunity as much as an actual mission. Morrison paused. You want to bring a student on a classified operation? General, in 6 months, you're going to have a dozen missions like this. You need snipers who can think past current limits. That means training them on real problems, not just practice exercises. I make this shot or I do not. But either way, someone learns how to approach impossible situations. Approved. See you at Andrews Air Force Base in 90 minutes. Colonel, sir, everyone here has watched the video of the 3-mile bound shot. They call it the Meridian Protocol now. Standard teaching material in every service branch. His voice carried something that might have been respect, or might have been awe. You have already changed how we think about marksmanship. Now we are asking you to change again. She hung up and turned to Webb. Get Lieutenant Ramirez. Tell her to pack for a long-range operation. Meet me at the weapons room in 15 minutes. She is about to learn what 4 miles looks like. Webb's eyes widened. 4 miles? Boss, that is impossible, she finished. I know. That is why we are bringing a student. If I can do it, she needs to understand how. If I cannot, she needs to understand why. Either way, the learning happens. She grabbed her kit bag and headed for the door. Elara Quinn, the Ghost Meridian, was going back to the field. Not for forgiveness. Not even for justice. But because somewhere at 4 miles distance, someone needed a shot that could not be made. And teaching the impossible was apparently her specialty. The target was a compound in the Hindu Kush Mountains of Afghanistan. A building where information said a high-value target was planning a chemical weapons attack. The attack was scheduled to happen in 18 hours. Regular assault was not possible. The compound was surrounded by natural land that funneled any ground approach through kill zones. Bombing from the air risked releasing the chemical agents into valleys below where people lived. A precision strike was required. Specifically, destruction of the storage system before weapons could be used. The shot distance was 4.2 miles. Elara stood at the observation point. Lieutenant Sofia Ramirez was beside her. Both of them studied the target through high-powered viewing scopes. The younger woman was 26, a Marine scout sniper who had proven herself in 3 tours. Her test score suggested she had the potential to even pass Elara's abilities, if she could learn to think past normal limits. "Tell me what you see," Elara said quietly. Ramirez had been studying the land for 20 minutes. She was matching map data with what she actually saw. Target building is raised about 800 feet above our position. That gives us a downhill shot advantage. Wind is currently 15 knots from the west, gusting to 25. She paused, checking her shooting computer. However, the computer says air modeling shows 3 separate temperature layers between here and the target. This creates unpredictable wind conditions. Additionally, the extreme range means bullet flight time will be more than 9 seconds. During that time, wind conditions could change a lot. What does the computer recommend? That the shot is not a good idea. Chance of hitting on the first try is calculated at less than 2%. And what do you think? Ramirez looked at her instructor. "I think computers do not account for someone who can read wind the way you do, ma'am." Good answer. Wrong conclusion. Elara stepped back from the viewing scope. The computer is right. This shot is not a good idea. It is barely possible. But possible and good idea are different measurements. You are here to learn how to judge one without confusing it for the other. She moved to the rifle case. A custom .416 Barrett, modified specifically for this operation. Longer barrel, heavier bullet, more gunpowder behind it. An ammunition engineer had told her it was the limit of what could be fired and still be accurate. Beyond this, science became more like suggestions and laws. Here is what I am going to teach you, Lieutenant. Watch my process, not just my actions. Ask questions about anything you do not understand. This may be the only time in your career you see someone try a shot at this range. I need you to learn from it whether I succeed or fail. Yes, ma'am. Elara began her ritual. First, the ground reading. But this time she explained every step for Ramirez. The valley creates a natural wind tunnel. Air flows west to east at ground level, but you see those birds circling at mid-height? They are riding rising heat currents that are moving the opposite direction. That means we have wind inversion, ground wind, and high wind moving different directions. The bullet will pass through both. How do you make up for winds going opposite ways? You do not make up for them. You use them. Watch. She pointed to a dust cloud near the 2-mile mark. See how that dust is spinning clockwise? That is a changeover point where ground wind meets high wind. They are creating a spinning tunnel, similar to what I used on the 3-mile shot in Yemen, but bigger. If I time the shot right, the bullet enters that spinning tunnel on the side where both winds are pushing the same way. It gets sped up through and comes out on the far side with a corrected path. Ramirez stared. You are going to shoot into a wind vortex on purpose? I am going to use the spinning wind as a steering tool. It is the only way to stay accurate at this range. The other choice is fighting conditions I cannot beat. But if your timing is off, then the bullet goes wildly off course. And I have failed, which is why timing is everything. Elara knelt beside the rifle. She began the long process of finding her breathing rhythm. Wind reading at extreme range is not about measuring. It is about predicting. You need to see the patterns the wind makes, understand its rhythm, and fire at the moment when its cycle lines up with your needs. For 30 minutes, she observed, not shooting, not even touching the rifle yet, just watching, reading the invisible language written in dust and heat shimmer, reading how far off trees bent in patterns that revealed air currents no machine could map. Ramirez watched in silence, learning that patience was as critical as precision. Finally, Elara settled behind the rifle. I'm going to walk you through every adjustment I make. Your job is to write it down. Every click, every change, every decision. Even if I miss, this information will be valuable for the next person who tries something like this. Ma'am, You're not going to miss. Lieutenant, at 4 miles, every sniper in history would miss. The question is not confidence. It is whether I can read conditions well enough to make the almost impossible slightly more likely than the completely impossible. She began adjusting the scope. Elevation. 112 clicks up to make up for extreme bullet drop. But I am going to dial back 3 clicks. Because the downhill angle and the vortex speedup will both reduce how much the bullet actually drops. Ramirez wrote frantically. Windage. 18 clicks right for ground wind push. But I am adding 12 more clicks. Because a high wind will push left after the spinning tunnel. And I need to prepare for that ahead of time. That is 30 clicks right when the wind is coming from the west. That seems backwards. It is because you are thinking about current conditions. I am aiming at where conditions will be when the bullet arrives. 9 seconds from now, the wind patterns are shifting. In about 90 seconds, the spinning tunnel will rotate to the best position, and the ground wind will gust to 27 knots. That is my window. She pressed her cheek to the stock. Finding the position she had held thousands of times across dozens of countries, the rifle became an extension of her bones. The scope became an extension of her eyes. Her breathing slowed. Watch the dust at the 2-mile mark, she murmured. When it starts spinning counterclockwise instead of clockwise, that means a vortex is rotated. I fire 3 seconds after rotation completes. Ramirez split her attention between the distant dust cloud and her instructor. This was beyond anything taught in any school. This was someone reading air science in real time, and betting lives on how they understood it. The wind shifted. The dust spiral began changing direction, slowly at first, then with growing certainty. Rotation complete, Ramirez whispered. 3 seconds, 2, 1. Arrow whispered into wind. Wind set. Then, fire. The .416 Barrett roared. The bullet flew for 9.3 seconds. In that time, it traveled 22,176 feet. For 0.2 miles of impossibility made real in copper and lead and precision engineering. It climbed 300 feet above horizontal, fighting gravity every inch. It lost speed like a runner getting tired, slowing from 3,000 feet per second at launch to barely 1,100 at impact. It passed through the first temperature layer at 600 meters, meeting the ground wind that pushed it 18 feet right, exactly as predicted. At 1,200 meters, it entered the spinning tunnel. For one moment, the bullet seemed to pause in midair, caught in opposing forces that should have torn it from its path. But Elara had timed the shot perfectly. The bullet entered where both winds pushed the same way. It was sped up through the rotation and came out on the far side with its path corrected. At 2,400 meters, it passed through the second temperature layer, meeting the high wind that pushed left. But Elara had already made up for this with her 30 clicks right. The bullet moved through space that felt like swimming through invisible currents. Each meter gained cost effort. At 3,600 meters, it became slower than sound. The sound barrier that every long-range bullet must eventually give up. Stability became critical. The bullet spin, given by the rifle's barrel, held true, even slower than sound, even at this impossible distance. The engineering of the round kept it together. At 4 miles, the bullet came down toward the target building at an angle, so steep it was nearly straight up and down. This was the moment when bullet drop changed from problem to advantage. The round fell from above, threading between compound buildings, past defensive walls, toward the single weak point in the chemical storage system. Impact. The bullet struck the storage container's outside pressure valve. The one point where the hard shell gave way to necessary mechanics. Metal shattered. Air seals broke. The storage system, designed to handle enormous inside pressure, failed under the specific calculated blow of a single bullet. A bullet that had flown farther than any sniper shot in recorded history. Chemical agents vented harmlessly into the sealed room, contained by backup system. Crisis stopped. Weapons attack prevented. Thousands of lives saved by copper and math. And a woman who had learned to read wind like scripture. In the observation post, Ramirez stared through the spotting scope. Her voice was barely a sound. Impact confirmed. Target destroyed. Ma'am, that was necessary, Elara said quietly. She pushed out the empty shell casing. Was possible because conditions lined up. Was successful because we prepared right. She turned to her student. What did you learn? Ramirez looked at her notes, then at her instructor, then back at the target building 4 miles away. I learned that excellence is not about making impossible shots. It is about understanding conditions so completely that the impossible becomes just unlikely, and then being good enough to make the unlikely work. Good. What else? That every shot carries weight. This one saved lives. But it could have failed. Understanding both possibilities, success and failure, is part of the discipline. Aaron nodded. What else? That. Ramirez paused. She was choosing words carefully. That you are not just teaching us to shoot. You are teaching us to think, to see patterns, to respect how hard this is while still having the confidence to act when action is needed. Yes. Era began taking apart the rifle. In 6 months, you will be training new students yourself, Lieutenant. They will ask you about the impossible shots. Do not tell them it is easy. Do not tell them it is about confidence or determination or any of the simple answers. Tell them it is about preparation meeting opportunity, about understanding conditions, about respecting the difficulty while refusing to be frozen by it. I will, ma'am. They packed the equipment in silence. 2 snipers who had just helped rewrite the boundaries of their job. The pickup helicopter was coming. Its blades were already making noise in the thin mountain air. As they loaded, Ramirez asked, Ma'am, do you think anyone will ever make a shot longer than 4 miles? Era looked at the mountains, at the wind that even now was writing patterns across the valley. Someone will. Maybe one of my students. Maybe someone I will never meet. That is the point of teaching. To create people who go past your own abilities. She smiled slightly. I hope they do. I hope some young Sniper 5 or 10 years from now makes a shot that seems impossible even by today's standards. Because that means we taught them well enough to push past our own limits. The helicopter settled. They climbed aboard. As it lifted, Ramirez leaned close to be heard over the blades. They're going to name this the Meridian Protocol, are they not? Like the 3-mile shot. Probably. Does that bother you? Becoming a legend? Era was quiet for a long moment. She watched Afghanistan get smaller below them. I am not a legend, Lieutenant. I am a sniper who has made some difficult shots and failed at others. The legend part? That is what people create when they need stories that make sense of chaos. I cannot control what stories they tell. I can only control what I teach. And what are you teaching, ma'am? She turned to her student. That wind is not the enemy. It is the guide. That impossible is just a measurement of current understanding, not a permanent wall. And that excellence in our job is not about the shots we make. It is about the judgment we bring to deciding which shots to take. Ramirez nodded, understanding she had just received something more valuable than shooting technique. She had been given perspective, the kind that turned good snipers into legendary ones. The helicopter turned toward the rising sun. Somewhere in that sunrise, at a distance no one had yet tried, another impossible shot was waiting. Another crisis that would require someone to push past boundaries that currently defined what was possible. And when that moment came, there would be a sniper trained by Elara Quinn, carrying forward the discipline she had written down, who would look at the distance, read the wind, and whisper the phrase that had become teaching. Wind set. Fire. The legend was not Quinn. The legend was what she had taught everyone willing to learn. That excellence was not a destination, but a discipline. That impossible was just current limits waiting to be beaten. And that every shot, no matter how far, no matter how difficult, began with listening to the wind. In shooting ranges across America, in military bases on 3 continents, in classrooms where the next generation of snipers learned their craft, that lesson took root. Ghost Meridian became more than a call sign. It became a way of thinking. And the wind, having found someone who finally understood its language, continued to whisper secrets to anyone patient enough to listen.